Hello everyone, Chris Guthrie here, host of SellerCast. In today's episode, we answer the question, how do you get rid of negative seller feedback and negative product reviews? There's a few different strategies out there that you may not be aware of and a few golden nuggets within this episode from my guest, Scott, who's from feedbackrepair.com. So let's go ahead and listen to this episode. And I'm sure you're going to get some good strategies that you can use to help avoid these pesky situations where you have negative seller feedback or negative product reviews that you want to take care of. So let's have a listen and let me know what you think by going to sellercast.com if you want to share comments in the podcast notes as well. Hello everyone, Chris Guthrie here, and today we have Scott from feedbackrepair.com on to talk about avoiding negative seller feedback, negative reviews, and also what to deal with them if you manage getting those. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I know that you do this for a living. That's what you do, is you help people with dealing with negative feedback, negative reviews, etc. But before we get into that, can you tell me if you've been selling products on Amazon before as well?
Sure. No, I've been selling on Amazon since January of 2012. And of course, I've been selling on eBay as well since 2002. And then I have a couple of other ventures that I've been working on. There's one that's Amazon Product Research, and it's indbl.com, and then a few other things along the same lines. But
Cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and that brought me to the point where I am now.
Yeah, and so 2012 is when, let's focus on the Amazon side then. So
Sure.
About 2012 is when you started selling. Were you primarily like reselling other products, or were you doing private label?
Well, I've dipped my toe into about every type of reselling that you can imagine, as far as, OA or RA or private label, wholesale, bundles, all of it. Yeah.
Just to jump in there too, for people that don't know, can you explain those
Sure.
the other acronyms? I know PL, private label.
Yeah, online arbitrage, RA, retail arbitrage, and then wholesale, and then bundles is just taking any combination of those things or even something else and then wrapping them up into a new product that you would use to differentiate what it is that you're offering.
Okay, so bundles are that primarily what you're doing right now than when you are selling?
No, I'm still doing basically all of those things.
Oh, okay.
I look at it as my own private mutual fund, portfolio against having any one of those things not work well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so you started selling in 2012. And so what made you decide to get into the service side of the business and helping other sellers that have problems with negative feedback, negative reviews, and want to have someone that can deal with those for them?
Sure. I started getting some negative feedback myself, and I was getting that feedback and didn't feel like I deserved it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I knew what I was doing. And it just finally occurred to me that there's something wrong with this system. There's nothing wrong with me or what I'm doing. I mean, not that there couldn't be, but I just felt like it was undeserved. And so the more I dug into that, the more research I did, the more I realized that I didn't have to live with the negative feedback that I'd already even tried to remove on my own. And when I cleaned up my own feedback and got it back to 100%, I started to look into, well, is it possible to do this for other people or other sellers experiencing the same type of issues? And so the more I did it, the better I got.
Okay. And so, I know that a lot of people listening are most likely using FBA for shipping and handling the fulfillment from Amazon, doing that. And I know in a lot of cases, they handle a lot of the negative feedback. And we're going to get to those sequences as well, or scenarios rather. But could you describe what some of the common strategies are to get rid of negative seller feedback for people that might be doing, reselling, or they're doing a hybrid of reselling and private label, so they still have to deal with some of those negative seller feedback issues that come up?
Sure. Well, a lot of the private label sellers are already doing the very best thing that they could be, which is, FBA. Most of my clients who are private label really don't have much trouble in the way of negative feedback because of the fact that they're protected through FBA. And so I recommend that to everybody, whether they're, not familiar with FBA yet or not. But, one of the other things that I certainly recommend beyond FBA is that, you can do so much to protect your account simply by doing everything you can to divert customers from going to Amazon with their complaints or concerns or questions. So if you're making yourself as accessible as possible through the contact methods that you offer through Amazon, and if you're including inserts in every single one of the products that you have that ship out, those are some of the best things that you can do to protect your account beyond what you're offering, proactively asking for additional positive reviews and positive feedback. And then, of course, there are things that you can do that are beyond that. I have an ebook on the topic, talks about some of the things that you can do in the way of email, phone calls, and letters, or obviously contacting Amazon directly when there is a negative feedback that shows up, and what kinds of approaches there are that you can deploy to get that taken care of.
Okay, so maybe can we dive into some of those strategies then if you have to do that? If you have to do phone calls or emails, what do you typically suggest? 'Cause I think that a lot of times when I talk to people, they're just afraid of, saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing
Right.
and then having that backfire. I think that's the biggest reason why people, don't try and get rid of some of the negative feedback. Or in this case, I guess we're kind of transitioning into talking about reviews. But, can you go into some of those a little more depth?
Right. And when you say transitioning, I mean, in one sense, yeah, obviously they're very much different and they're handled very differently by Amazon, but the approach as a seller is somewhat similar in a lot of ways. And that is, obviously the first thing that you want to do when you're getting a hold of a customer is apologize. They've had a bad experience. They came to Amazon looking to get something quickly and to have a great experience and have it be a seamless transaction, and something happened in the midst of all that and you got caught up in it, and it was either your fault or it was something wrong with your product or something wrong with the shipping process, and you've got to smooth all that over because you're the one who's being held responsible for it by them through their feedback or their negative review. So obviously the first thing to do is apologize, and that helps diffuse the situation. But beyond that, then you can start to figure out through interacting with them, whether it's a phone call, which is why I like that the best, because you can get the best feedback the fastest and really kind of get a feel for the situation. Whereas if you're, using email or using letters, it's just a lot less responsive and requires a lot more patience on your part. And there's so many things that you don't know when you can't hear what somebody's saying, you can't hear their tone, all that sort of thing. It's just, there's some certain aspects of talking to somebody on the phone that are really difficult to navigate as well. For one thing, getting a hold of somebody. Another thing, people don't want to be interrupted. They wanted this process to go smooth from the get-go, to go smoothly, and then all of a sudden here they're having to put up with you're interrupting whatever it is that they're doing. If they're having dinner or whatever, they're viewing that as an additional negative part of their experience. And you've got to be able to get across very quickly that you're there to help. You're there to try to fix things. You're there to apologize, let them know that you're sorry for what happened, try to figure out what happened, what you can do to make it better, and then basically turn the whole experience around as much as possible and leave them with something that feels satisfactory.
Okay, I actually want to latch on to some of the strategies you talked about when dealing with the phone calls. So, I mean, I know that a lot of people might be just, oh wow, call someone. I understand. I can send them an email, and these days people are so used to just getting emails. But I know from even my own Amazon shopping experience, I've never received a phone call from a seller. And not everything I've bought is Amazon Prime. Sometimes it's from other sellers, and sometimes it's from people that are doing private label or whatever. But I've never received a phone call.
I see.
So from the standpoint of, what do you say to someone beyond, okay, I'm really sorry for the issue. Is there a specific time, or rather this, how about this? Is there a specific time that you should call to avoid those scenarios of calling them during dinner? I know obviously there's different time zones involved. Do you know if there's a better time you've seen from either talking to your clients or others? It's like the best time to call to have the least likely chance of someone being upset that they're getting a phone call in the first place?
Well, I do try to weigh all that. I look at where that customer is located. I look at whether they're male or female. I look at what they purchased and what the value is of that purchase, and I try to weigh all of those different things, and do a little bit of that background research in advance to know what's the likelihood of this product that it was used for themselves. What's the likelihood that it was a gift? How much did it cost them? How much were they put out by it not being a perfect transaction? I try to weigh all of those different things, and then if it's a female customer, I try to have a male caller matched up, or if it's a vice versa, male customer, I'll try to have a female caller matched up, and that seems to make a difference, overall. And
just to jump in there, is it one of those things where that's just from your experience, but it's kind of tough to provide data tying that together?
Yeah, it's hard to quantify. I mean, that's a little bit anecdotal, but mostly it's just I'd say experientially, it's a better result. I don't know if it's sociology, psychology, mix it all together. It's hard.
Okay.
It's hard to say, but it just seems to be a better result. And I generally would try to call. I'm going to assume that most of these people, and sometimes you can tell differently. Most of the time, these customers, I'm going to assume that they go to work, and that they are going to get home, around 5:30 their time, whatever time zone that is. So I'm going to try to shoot a call in at that time and see if I can catch them. I'm not going to necessarily try to take care of everything all at that one moment. And I'm going to see if they're available. If they're not, I'm going to offer to call back at a more convenient time. But the biggest thing I want to get across to them immediately is, I am trying to take care of the situation that they are dealing with where they had a negative experience on Amazon. And I just want to follow up on that sale and let them know, hey, we're sorry that got messed up. I mean, it's helpful, obviously, to be a little bit more specific about what it is if you know what was wrong. Sometimes you can try to ascertain that right then and there. Sometimes you can not really delve into the specifics, but just try to do everything you can to fix it from that point forward. And you don't know going into the call, unless you've done the research and it's plainly obvious, what is it exactly that the customer's looking for at this point? Do they want a replacement? Do they want a refund? Are they happy with an apology? When I've called customers, I've never had one poorly receive the call, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell sometimes, okay, somebody's really busy. They don't really want to be on the phone, but none of them just get angry and hang up. Most of the time, they're pretty ecstatic at the fact that, wow, this nameless, faceless, anonymous corporation cares. They care about me and they care about this transaction and they want to take care of it. And people are pretty responsive to that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I think that definitely too, making sure that you look up the order to see where they purchased it from, what state. And yeah, those tips you gave about whether or not it looks like it's a gift or it's something they might use themselves.
Yeah.
That's, I know that in some cases can be more difficult to tell. But if it's a children's toy, then most likely it's a gift. But, talking about feedback, I'd like to ask a little bit more on that. I know that most of our listeners are likely doing Amazon FBA. And so one of the most common strategies to remove seller feedback is if the seller feedback is, if it's a complaint about the order, then Amazon most likely automatically remove the feedback. We use it in their algorithm. But if there's a complaint about the product in terms of it being basically a negative review left as seller feedback, then you can always go in and get those removed. Are there other strategies to get seller feedback removed for FBA sellers, or those were the main ones? And maybe if there are other strategies for people that are doing reselling, then maybe you could share a few of those, and then we can shift over and talk about reviews.
Right. A lot of the time you can get a review or a regular feedback removed for reasons that do not fit within the structure of what Amazon is telling you they will remove them for, if that makes sense. It's kind of a roundabout way of saying you don't have to stick to the rules. And that happens quite a bit. I mean, there are a few times when the chances of you getting that review or feedback removed, I keep saying, interact interchangeably, reviews and feedback. And, there is obviously a huge difference. So the chance of getting a review removed is fairly unlikely. I mean, I've done it before, but I never guarantee that because I never know if it's going to happen or not. But more often than not, I know if feedback is going to be removed. I can tell, I can assess what's going to happen. And the ways that you have available to get them removed are broader than what they tell you. Is what I can say about that. You can have them removed for other reasons besides the ones that they give you. And it's just, gosh, I mean, I've perfected that over time, and to the point where 80% of the time I'm going to get it removed. Then again, I've seen other instances where that doesn't apply, and the reason why is because some of those things that you do aren't likely to fit into the category of them authorizing removal. If there's a problem with shipping, or if they didn't receive their product, or if they received it late, or if it was damaged, most of those reasons, most of those times, you're not going to get that removed, and it's going to require a contact to the customer directly.
Okay, so let's shift over a little bit more to reviews. I know that one of the strategies we talk about for people that are using Salesbacker is to, in your email sequence, you can have the first email go out asking for seller feedback. And then if that customer leaves you negative feedback, I'm most likely leaving you negative feedback as a product review, because a lot of times customers even don't know the difference between seller feedback and negative reviews. In the case of Salesbacker, we can automatically turn off the campaign so that your future emails won't go out where you're going to ask them for a review, right? So, but if they leave you positive feedback, they'll continue to receive the rest of the emails in your sequence, and then they'll ask, and then that's where you're asking for the product review,
right?
So that's one of the ways that I know that people can help with on the seller feedback side, and filtering out those people that might be angry before they even see those. But what are some strategies you've seen for getting reviews removed? Is it I know, does it just go back to our earlier conversation about using the phone call, and there's different ways you can find people, find who it was that ordered that to find them, to call them, or are there other strategies you can do? I know sometimes too, in more competitive categories, people are leaving fake negative reviews, whether they're competitors or whatever.
Right.
And is it the same type of game in terms of removing negative reviews as it is as negative seller feedback, or is it a lot more difficult?
Well, it is more difficult for sure, and it's I think a longer game. You don't get an immediate response sometimes, and I think Amazon is far less responsive in terms of, even if you think you should legitimately be able to get a review removed, Amazon's far less likely to do it, and they're far less dependable to do it. Even if they tell you they're going to do it, sometimes they will say they're going to remove it. Or even if a customer goes in and actually removes a review and you were successful at getting them to do that, sometimes Amazon won't do it. So I would say it's not as sure of a deal. Now, if you were to go, read the ebook that I put out on removing negative feedback, again, a lot of those same tactics and strategies can be deployed for reviews in terms of what you're thinking when you contact the customer through, either a letter or an email or a phone call. But there are other specific strategies for reviews, and I detail those in a blog post. I can cover some of that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is I'll link to those resources in the show notes. But just for people that are listening right now,
right,
if you can go over some of those, that'd be great, and then people can probably get more info from those as well.
Right. One of the things you can do is you can over refund. Amazon allows you to refund up to $20 over the amount that a customer paid when you're providing a refund to that customer. And I like that. The one thing you cannot, yeah, and frankly, $20, you would gladly get rid of that review for $20. You can't quibble over $20. But you one thing you can't do is you can't demand that they change their review in exchange for the refund. You can't really reference that. You have to hope that they feel guilty, or feel some sort of obligation, or that they've become more satisfied than they were, and go ahead and remove or update their review. But there's some good results, maybe 30% of the time, that could result in somebody modifying their review. Mm-hmm. Another thing you can do is, if you're able to find the original order number, then and it's a true order, it's not somebody making it up, or a competitor or whatever, which happens more often than not, unfortunately, especially if you're in a competitive category. If you have a particularly good product, you're going to incur that kind of attention to your listing. But if you're able to find the original order number, and then you're able to get the phone number, you may be able to deploy some of these other tactics to get a hold of that customer and try to fix the situation, if you have a real situation to be fixed. If the situation is not real, or you cannot find that customer, then one of the very best things I think you can do is to leave a comment on that review. And you just have to be very careful what comments you leave and what the tone is. I mean, essentially, especially if the review isn't real, you're not really, helping that particular customer. What you're really doing is you're posting something that's helpful, that all of the potential customers have the opportunity to see. And what you want to do is humanize yourself, apologize for the situation, and let anybody else who's reading these reviews know that you're there to help them, that you're there to provide support, that you're there to make good on the warranty, that you're there to provide a refund, answer questions, anything like that. You want to make sure that you use that as an opportunity, not to be defensive, of course, but to let people know that, hey, you stand behind this product. And if anybody else buys it, they're going to receive your support.
I think that's a good point there. That really, and I do this too on the reviews. I always comment on 3-star and below reviews. That's the threshold I usually do. But when you reply, I think that especially for newer sellers, people kind of get frustrated, right? Or they take offense to it. Someone's saying something
this
negative.
Is your baby,
Exactly, right? And it just comes back to being willing to humble yourself to people that, anonymous people that are angry at you, the world, or whatever it may be, and they've decided to take it out on your product. Sometimes it could be justified, and more often than not, probably it's not justified. But there are those people out there that, for whatever reason, like to get very upset. I've seen plenty of them myself. So yeah, I think that's great. That's a great point. Not honestly, too, that makes sense. Obviously, you're going to increase your conversion if people that are shopping for your products see those reviews and then see, okay, you're commenting on the negative reviews, you're being apologetic, you're giving an option for them to contact you, and then offering to make it right.
Sure.
And so yeah, that all sounds great.
You can do more. I mean, it's not you're not limited to those options. Obviously, building your business and growing the number of reviews and doing things that are going to result in new sales, all those sorts of things, investing in new product offerings, new branding, whatever, all of that is what you really want to spend your energy on. You don't want to spend much energy on the negative reviews and negative feedback. And obviously, very obviously, one of the best ways you can prevent any of that is to have a good product. And I hate to say that because I've had some customers that are looking for some help, and the problem is they have a horrible product. I don't even want to tell them that. I sort of hint around at what can you do to improve this, and I've given people some very good and actionable advice about, well, what can they do on the next order? Let's say this order was their preliminary order for 300 and they got all these negatives, and they started getting negatives when they started, having organic sales. When these were items that weren't sent out at a discount or in exchange for a review, and all of a sudden reality hits and they start getting honest feedback for the first time, and maybe they didn't spend the time that they needed to up front to get samples and to test these out and look at them for themselves and see what people would do with these things in the real world. And all of a sudden this stuff starts to break or it doesn't perform as expected. You want to make sure that you go through all the right steps to find out if this product from this manufacturer is quality, and you want to do something to differentiates you from everybody else who's piling on to these same popular products. And that helps tremendously. You can avoid a lot of these things. Now, at the same time, if you've got a great product that's really, hitting it in terms of velocity and searchability, and you're getting all kinds of great feedback or great reviews, then you're going to have people nipping at your heels, and you're going to have people deploying these, nefarious tactics to try to take you down and keep you from stealing their sales. And, you've got to be able to be defensive on that and take care of things this way on the other side of things, despite the fact that you really don't want to be focusing on this stuff. But it's a both and deal. Obviously one of those things that you can do to protect yourself is to just get a boatload of 5-star reviews. That helps bury the negativity, and it blunts the effect that a negative would have.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've seen negative reviews when they first hit and they're listed as most recent, and the page conversions will drop. And so, yeah, if you need to do some type of promotion, wherever it may be, to help get a bunch more reviews real quickly, then yeah, that's one way you can do it. Another thing you touched on too, I just wanted to clarify for people that might be listening, and You want to make sure that if you do any types of giveaways, that the people that give you those reviews, make sure they disclose that they received the product for free or in exchange or at a discounted rate in exchange for a review. You want to make sure they have the disclosure on there, because Amazon can remove that.
Yeah.
Because they'll see if the product's been purchased via coupon code. And then if it doesn't have the disclaimer, then Amazon's most likely going to remove it. So just keep that in mind as well.
Right. I'll tell you along those same lines. One thing I heard today, and that's one of the reasons why I still sell on Amazon, is because not that it's a significant income stream, but that it keeps me fresh and it keeps me experiencing the same things that my customers are experiencing. In terms in terms of pain and what they're dealing with. And one of the things I heard today that I hadn't heard before was, when you receive a product, you're not supposed to leave a review for at least 7 days until after you've received it. So there's potentially some sort of buffer zone there where Amazon is being a little bit more stringent about what they do in terms of automatic removal of reviews if it's being left prior to 7 days.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one, but I mean, I know that the way that they use their algorithm, it's continuously, updating. But yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
And I've not seen that in particular, but
I hadn't either, but it's just something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, I guess that's just something to be aware of for people listening. Actually, we're nearing the end of our time, but I wanted to just spend briefly a little bit of time talking about the strategies that you can use to remove seller feedback or product reviews that are against Amazon's terms of service. Specifically so these are things people should not do, right? Just to reemphasize,
Sure.
Do not do these things, right? Are there strategies that you can use or that you've seen people try, and then, they're thinking they're being clever, and then that's actually against Amazon's terms of service?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you can get no votes on reviews that help hide a review. And I think that's helpful, but I've heard it takes, maybe as many as 100 to basically hide that review, or even strengthen your case with Amazon to have it removed. But I would say that that's one of the things that you don't want to do in terms of, I know of a company that will allow you to buy negatives. You don't want to go out and do something like that would be specifically against the Amazon terms of service, because you can actually buy reviews and you can actually buy no votes. And while you could do that and you could probably get away with it, I just wouldn't recommend it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the potential damage to your account.
Definitely.
But there are other things you can do to blow up your reviews as well. And I don't see a lot of people doing it, but I recommend promos and giveaways, not just on Facebook, which you hear a lot about, but also on something like Living Social or Slick Deals or Deal News or Woot or Fat Wallet or Brad's Deals. You can get pretty deep into that. And you can also spread those things sort of evenly amongst those, so you're not having to give away, 500 units in order to get that kind of response and that kind of velocity.
Cool. Well, yeah, and I think, and just to clarify to you, one other thing I wanted to mention, and I think we talked about this before, and this is another strategy not to do, because again, it's against Amazon's terms of service, but don't offer an incentive for a review, right? So don't offer
absolutely.
A discount on a product or a removal of a refund or partial refund on a product to get a review. All those things are against Amazon's terms of service.
Yeah, you have to be very careful about that.
Yeah,
especially with like I said earlier, you really want to include an insert with all of your products that go out, but you don't want to tie anything that you say in that insert toward anything in terms of like something that could be conceived of as bribery to get to ask, or asking for a 5-star review. You want to ask for honest feedback, but you want to ask them to contact you if there are any issues. Now, I see a lot of instances where somebody's asking for 5-star reviews, and that's really not something you should be asking for.
Yep. No, that's all good. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing really is what it comes down to, just kind of wrapping up this part on what not to do, is if you ultimately think that it's somewhat shady, it's probably something you shouldn't do. Now, for those people that don't have as stringent a moral compass. Just make sure you re-listen back to that section where we talked about that, because you want to make sure that you don't get into trouble doing those things, because the last thing you want to do is get your Amazon seller account banned,
right?
And lose that income stream and lose a big chunk of your business if you're only selling on Amazon. So
well, there are more things along those lines that people really should be paying attention to in terms of jeopardizing their account. And even if your moral compass isn't such that it would normally prevent you from doing those things, it just makes sense to not do those things because it's not worth the jeopardy to your account.
Awesome.
One of those things, I wanted to put it in there because I've heard of people doing this a lot as well, is they send out their initial products to friends and family. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that. They're cracking down on that. So you can send it out to friends, but I wouldn't send it out to anybody who could be related to you or considered to be related to you, because those reviews will get removed.
Yeah, that was something that they recently updated in their terms of service a few months back. Maybe, I can't remember exactly when it was, but yeah, that was something that people used to advocate a lot. And it makes sense that Amazon's made steps to avoid that. And in a lot of cases, they're using some sophisticated methods to figure out those relationships. And to make sure those reviews don't display. So yeah, another great point as well. Scott, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking about some of these strategies. Again, for people listening, you can check out the show notes. I'll have links to the ebook and blog post and some other the resources that Scott mentioned. And just thank you so much again for coming on and giving some strategies for people to help avoid these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, take care.
All right, and that's the episode with Scott. If you want to check out the show notes, you can go to sellercast.com/6 to check out some of the resources that were mentioned. And again, we talked a lot about getting feedback removed, reviews removed, strategies to deal with what happens if you do get reviews that are bad. And so again, a lot of the ways you can combat that is just by simply getting a lot of extra reviews. And so one of the best ways you can do that is with the tool that we built, Salesbacker. And you can go to sellercast.com/now to check out a 60-day free trial of the tool that we built. You don't need a credit card or anything like that to get going. You just sign up, pick a campaign, and you can start sending emails right away to your customers on Amazon to help you get more reviews. And so that's one of the best ways to help defend against negative reviews, to simply push them out of the way with a bunch of natural, organic, positive reviews. Thank you so much again for listening, and have a great rest of your day.